What's going on, internet people? It's Chris here from Lords of War with a bonus video. Bonus today. We normally make videos on what day is it today? Tuesday. Getting ready to go to Adepticon this week, so brain's a little fried. And I'm just responding to a little bit of internet news from yesterday. There was a huge announcement. As you can see, I'm in this shady corner of my store here with this game called Battletech. How's that? And I just wanted to respond and react to the news of the new Battletech Gothic game that was announced yesterday. And as we always do here on this channel, give a retailer perspective. What are our thoughts based on the lens behind the counter? People kind of like, how's this going to make money? Do we think it's going to be a good product? That sort of thing. And I have to say, my initial reaction was to chuckle a little bit. It looked a little goofy to me just on the first kind of pass through. And I think it's just because one part of my brain went to like a really cynical place, which is like it's very clearly a product made because they needed a product to make. And I suppose like you could obviously say isn't that everything? Yes, it is everything. But I think just to kind of go into like how Battletech has built this business, or Catalyst Games has built this brand now in the last, let's say, 5 years, they have a clear strategy of how they want to keep making things. And I think what this shows is it's a little concerning. And the reason I'll say that is because they have become almost like addicted to this Kickstarter way of doing things, way of releasing products. And I think when you rely on this direct-to-consumer, huge cash influx, it's very difficult to not have it every year. And especially when they're doing $3-4 US million dollar redos with these Kickstarters regularly every year. I think that's become the expectation of, okay, how are we going to get that revenue again next year? How are we going to make up that revenue? And the worrisome thing to me is that they've become big now, and they're no longer a product that's not on most retail shelves. Like, I feel like, based on what I've seen locally at least, and what you find folks have also told me, and a lot of Battletech fans that watch this channel, that it is available in most of the stores you shop at that carry miniature games. So the big question becomes, why are they doing Kickstarter then? Why do the Kickstarter? Because, and the simple answer is money, right? Like, at the end of the day, it's if you can manage a Kickstarter properly and well, you get to sell direct to consumer and make a higher margin, in theory, ideally. The knock-on effect of that is there is less excitement at the retailer level once the product hits the retail shelves. And the releases don't tend to be as exciting. So like when we got a bunch of the new Battletech Mercenary stuff, which is really, really cool, I have to say. We were really excited to start carrying this. All the ground troops and extra mechs and stuff. It wasn't like a new 40K launch or, like something like that. Like it should have been. Like it was basically on the Kickstarter, but it wasn't when it hit the retailer. Because the bulk of people that wanted it had already purchased it, right? So I had a lot of people just come in to pick up extra things, like seconds of things or whatever, which is fine. I'm happy to make money. Obviously, I'm happy to make money. I got to pay the bills. But it does beg the question, why still? Why are they still doing this? Why are they still doing the Kickstarter thing when they have a robust network of distributors that carry their products and hobby shops that have made Battletech sections in their store, have communities? They're the ones now. It's well out of their hands now. It's well into the hands of the retailer that are actually running activities, giving people a space to play, showing them the product. We're well past the days of what's Battletech, at least at the retailer level. And I think this like Battletech Gothic, I keep trying not to call it Battlefleet Gothic because the name is so close. this Battletech Gothic is clearly, I don't know, if I was a Battletech fan, which I'm not like someone who collects and plays Battletech, I'm just someone who sells in the shop. So I'll get that out of the way, obviously. I think the product's really cool. I'm just old and have less time for multiple game systems. So I just can't even look at it. I can't even get into it. It's just too much. But obviously from the perspective of watching the people interact with it, selling it to people, I feel like I have a lot of insight there. So what's worrisome, I suppose, about, if you want to be cynical about this Battletech Gothic release, is if I was a core Battletech fan and player, hobbyist, whatever, wherever you sit in that Rubicon, I would be concerned that they were running out of ideas for their core product. And that they didn't feel they had enough stuff to do another big year of their core Battletech product. That would be worry number one for me. Worry number two would be that if they are going to put a ton of time and resources into Battletech Gothic, what does that mean for the game that I love and I put, that I support and I buy models for and play with my friends? Does that mean we're not going to see any releases for like a year for that system? That's when you look at these small companies, and like I don't want to call a company that makes miniatures and has them in stores across the world small, but small in the sense that vulnerable. You know what I mean? Like these companies aren't Goliaths. There's nothing guaranteed about their operations. A lot of these miniature companies are one mistake away from things not working out. We've seen in the past, right? And the experience I've had selling second games of companies that weren't Games Workshop has generally not been good. There's sort of a history of littered corpses of these attempts from companies that have a really, really good game system and brand that's sort of very attached to that game system. And the companies sort of feel the need to creatively break out of that for a number of reasons that are actually completely understandable and respectable and sometimes necessary. Like there are sort of like you can kind of design your way into a trap, or you can run out of runway with stuff. And that kind of sounds crazy with intellectual property that you own yourself, but sometimes there are like physical limits to all the things you can make for your game. We've seen this with like War Machine. We've seen this with like Infinity. And the kind of like modern solution is either like create a new game system and then kind of like have releases for each that are a bit slower and more sustainable, or you have to kind of like purge. This is like people always give GW a lot of crap for this, but other companies do it too. You have to purge whole like forces, armies, units from armies, and create brand new ones to create like purchase incentives. And so that's to me what this is, obviously, is Battletech saying, wow, we've had a tremendous amount of success over the last few years with this core product of ours. Where is future revenue going to come from? And I do wonder if they're seeing that there are some limitations to what they can do with just the the Battletech IP without messing with that, without changing it, without being creative. That's just from my perspective where I'm sitting, just from a business side. It seems to be a very businessy decision like that. Not and like I said, I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with it. You should make business decisions when you're a business. It's more to say that for the purest Battletech fans that love the IP, that love the company, that want to see them keep creating the thing that they love, I think those people may be a little hurt by this, just because whether the Catalyst Games wants to do this or not, it's going to divert resources, divert attention. It's going to spread out the talent, whatever you want to call it. It's just going to lead to that sort of like separation of games, and I think that's the concerning part. It reminds me a little bit of like, it's obviously not identical, but like when Atomic Mass is like creating new Star Wars games. It's not the same because like they're not really using the same rule systems. They're not sharing the same scale even, which like obviously the Battletech games are gonna be the same scale, and it looks like they may have, I don't know yet, but like may have some shared rules, and maybe there'll be some crossover, which is probably the safest way you could possibly do something like this. But it does lead to some like interesting places. Like you just don't know how people are going to respond. I guess that's my point. You just don't know how people are going to respond. These are, unfortunately, these like hobby products are living in a very like fragile ecosystem. If they're not 40K, basically, like all these games exist in a pretty fragile ecosystem. It's all these like people don't realize that as much as there's groups that get together and play these like big events and stuff like that, they get up to con like where we're going this week. This stuff mostly lives off of these small pockets of support all over the place. Like it's a lot of like small repeated pockets of people playing with their friends or little clubs or whatever. And that's, in some ways, that's like really robust and healthy because it's harder to like, it's almost like these like splinter cells that are all like many heads of a hydra that are hard to extinguish. But in other ways, like sometimes it only takes like one person in each group to get a bit sour, and then the things start to fall apart really quickly, right? I don't know. I'm kind of just whiffing a little bit on this, trying to give you my honest initial feelings about how I think this may or may not go. Now let's talk about the positive upside. Like what could, so I've been very cynical and very negative. That's where like, when you're in business, it's kind of where your head goes to first, because you think very conservatively. You think like, oh, how is this going to make money? How are they, like, what have they thought of here? How are they going to do these things? That's kind of where your head goes. Where's the upside here? The upside is obviously huge. They've very methodically, it looks like, made this sort of look very 40K-ish. Even the name is going to, have people that have been in, and there's no mistake, like Battletech is an old company. Games Workshop's an old company. A lot of people that have played Battletech have brushed across the, whether they've collected or been in the 40K hobby at some point. I think most of them probably have, or they have brushed across it. It's almost hard to imagine never crossing paths and becoming somewhat intimate with the lore and the universe. So, if you're going to make a second game in your Battletech, why wouldn't you look at the biggest competitor, the biggest company in the world making the stuff and be like, well, let's try to make something a bit more like what they make, and maybe fans of theirs will give us a second look. Hey, it's not the dumbest logic I've ever heard in the world. And so that's obviously a huge thing. It's gonna get a lot of buzz. It's aesthetically quite different. It does lean more into this sort of like Trench Crusade-y. Ash was saying Doom. I think that's an excellent example of like imagery. This Doom-esque sort of like feel, like the hellish, demonic sort of look to the stuff. It's kind of popular right now, like if we're being honest, right? Look how successful the Trench Crusade Kickstarter was, and if they can tap into that grimdarky kind of vibe, that's potentially a whole new swath of customers that they don't currently have. So that's a plus. Now, there's probably also an internal calculation of, well, there's for every 100 Battletech customers that buy our Kickstarters, we expect 50% of them will probably just buy this one anyways. That's probably not bad logic. It's probably not bad logic. It's probably not far from the truth. So I suppose if they think they can get at least half their customers to engage with a product like this, they can make up the difference with the fact that it's a brand new aesthetic. Brand new. It's obviously still heavily borrowing from Battletech, but it's borrowing from other genres that are very popular, let's be honest, right now. Then it may have some legs to stand on when it hits. The only downer, the only bummer is that for us, it's a lot less exciting because most of the money is made up front when they run the Kickstarter, right? So we get to watch on in excitement and be like, oh, cool, the Kickstarter was really successful. One day it'll come to retail and we'll get the trickle down or whatever, which, that's fine. And I guess like the real what will we see moment will come when it hits the floor, right? Like when the product hits the floor, how does this end up looking on the club level, in the gaming group, at the hobby shop level? It's going to be fascinating to see, like, is this going to just be another game that like the Battletech people mix in and play with, or is it going to splinter the groups a little bit and make it a little bit more like, oh, we play this, but no, we play this way, and we like the classic. Obviously, like, you have your classic and Alpha Strike people, but now you're going to have a third and fourth group of people that play the grimdark version of Battletech. I don't know. And the more, going back to being cynical, Chris, again, the more concerning thing I guess you could say is this going to be now the problem of the day for Catalyst, where they now have to create a $3 to $4 million revenue Kickstarter every year? And what the heck is that going to mean for their product? And this is a very big it's a common problem now in the 2025 sort of, like, not to be, economics Chris, but capitalist business landscape, is the expectations for these companies that make miniatures are so high. There's a demand for constant new releases, right? Like, Games Workshop sets the tone for all the other businesses to have constant releases, to stay relevant, to stay in the zeitgeist, to stay talked about and culturally relevant. And companies that don't do that aren't seen as alive, aren't seen as producing real good new things, right? And I feel like companies feel a lot of pressure, like they have to come up with great new things every year. And the knock-on effect is that that's a driver that doesn't necessarily lead to creatively good things sometimes, right? So that's obviously the concern for something like Battletech. It has a great history as a company. From what I understand, they've had some blunders in the past, but they're kind of riding this high of, like, only doing great things recently. This is a left turn to some degree, and it's fascinating in just the sense that, like, I guess we're going to find out. We're going to find out how they do this. Yeah, that's all I got for today. Let us know what you think about this news. Are you excited? I guess my question is two questions. If you already collect Battletech, is this something that you're going to try, i.e. spend money on? And then question number two, if you don't collect Battletech, is this something that would actually, something like this would actually get you to spend money for the first time? So I guess those are really the only two important questions here. Thanks for watching. As always, we're going to have a lot of these, like, spontaneous videos this next week instead of our classic sort of sit and talks, because we're going to be off to Adepticon, and we're going to try to do some coverage of the event there and see any news and kind of react to stuff that's going on there. Yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this little ramble video, and I'll catch you guys soon. Take care.